sad old movie on repeat. No love to make, no one to hold.
All right. Well, we are very excited to have Mr. Ian Nelson here with us today. Thank you for joining us.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So we don't have a ton of time, but I wanted to ask you, firstly, how your creative journey. How did you get into music? How did you get into acting? I want to know some of the goody details about your journey to where you are now.
My gosh, where do I even start? So acting is a whole different thing.
Sure.
My journey with acting is very different than my journey with music. So my acting started, I was in probably 5th grade, and I auditioned for the school play because I had a crush on this girl who was in the grade above me. And we had no classes together, and I wanted to hang out with her, so I auditioned for the school play. Didn't get a part in the school play, so I came back to the school musical in the spring with like a vengeance. Because I was like an athlete when I was a kid, so I had that competitive spirit. And I didn't like that I didn't get a part in the play, so I auditioned for the musical, and it was Joseph in the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. And I ended up getting a part of...
I've seen that so many times, like the Donny Osmond tape.
Oh my gosh.
So many times.
That was one of my favorite things to watch around that time. I was constantly watching that because it was magnificent. It was beautiful, and they don't really make stuff like that anymore. But it was like I was taken by all of those recorded live plays in the sense like the Hugh Jackman Oklahoma.
I watched that so many times.
You remember that?
That's so crazy. Yeah, I've seen that so many times. My dad showed me the Donny Osmond tape, and my sister was really into Hugh Jackman at a time, so we watched the hell out of that tape as well. I call them tapes, like it wasn't on DVD, but it might have been a tape. I'm not sure.
They might as well have been on tape.
I think
they might as well have been.
Joseph was a tape. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
People are just like, Wolverine was on Broadway, and it's like, yes.
On tape? Yeah.
Yes, on tape. It's on Broadway on tape.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. But it was like around that kind of stuff. I was really into live like televised musicals, and so I would really get into that. But that's really how I started acting. It was as simple as that.
Okay. Crazy.
Just doing school plays and stuff, and then that escalated because at the time where I'm from, North Carolina, had a bunch of opportunities to work at a high level because the entertainment industry was kind of camped out there. They were shooting of course, a lot of those WB shows shot in Wilmington, and then a lot of big movie productions would either shoot in Asheville or Wilmington or even in Charlotte or where I live and where I'm from in Winston-Salem. So it was just a very like perfect moment for me to start acting because there was an industry where I lived. And then I eventually was able to get some cool parts in some cool movies, and that got me, agents and managers in Los Angeles, and that allowed me to start traveling and being considered for bigger parts. But the journey to music is even stranger.
Okay.
So I've been taking voice lessons since I was a kid. My first professional gig was an operetta in my hometown. I was a boy soprano when I was like 12 or something, or 11 or 12.
Wow,
and
trip out.
What was it?
That's a trip out. That's crazy.
Right? I know.
Yeah.
It's like I look back at the music and I'm shocked at how high I could sing. But so I've been taking voice lessons since I was a little kid, and then when I moved back to Los Angeles, I lived in New York for a little bit, about 3-4 years ago, and I moved back to LA, and I found a new voice teacher, and he started telling me that I should write my own music, and that whole idea was like very foreign to me. I identified 100% as an actor, so the idea of writing music, I didn't really understand the value of it. It sounds ridiculous looking back at how closed-minded I was at first, but funny enough, I started writing this pretty weird, like this musical. I started writing this musical at the time, and I realized I had to learn how to write songs. And then while I was working on a film in upstate New York, and I brought my guitar with me, and I started to learn how to write like pop songs, and like analyzing structure and listening to different kinds of structures, and what made a song this, like what was a hook, what was a chorus, all these different things. And I came back to LA and made a demo. And then fast forward a few months, I had finished my first single with this young producer in LA named Jacob McCaslin.
Sky blue gets dark enough to see the colors of the city lights.
Who I met through my voice teacher. And then 2 weeks later, we go into lockdown for COVID. So the timing of it was very, very strange. But I went into COVID with this realization. I thought, so I live in Los Angeles, and my parents wanted me to come home to North Carolina because no one knew how long this thing was going to last. Some people were saying springtime, some people were saying 1-2 years. And I thought to myself, if I've learned anything from being an actor on set, is that people always think things will happen faster than they actually do.
Way faster. Way
faster, right? Everybody has completely unrealistic expectations, especially about deadlines. So my first thought was, I'm not going to get back on set for probably 1.5 to 2 years. And I thought to myself, what am I going to do from now until then? And I had this really strange moment where I like looked across the room at my guitar and I just pointed at it. And I was like, you.
A moment of realization.
Moment of realization. I barely played the guitar starting at the beginning of the pandemic. I could play very basic chords. I could barely play my first song, the one we just recorded. I could barely play it. And
that's wild. That's just, so it's only been a couple of years then.
It's been a couple of years.
Yeah.
So I just stayed in LA. My parents were begging me to come home. I said, Mom, Dad, I don't know why, but I need to be here right now. I just need to be in LA. And probably about a month after that, I was shooting my first music video. We shot on an empty street. It was a 2-person crew.
I need to know how you feel. I've been waiting for someone feels this real.
Mm-hmm.
And we just did that, and then that kicked off my music career in the sense that I was just playing guitar all the time and writing tons of songs. And, you know, it was like, it was my life, and it's still been mostly my life over these past few years. So my journey with music is very strange, but it was like, yeah, I was barely making music a couple years ago.
Interesting. I actually have so many thoughts, but the one thing I really wanted to circle back to was, you said when you were a kid, you started off with voice lessons.
Yes.
And that actually caught my attention because I think a lot of times, like, so my roommate is, he's classically trained and he's been playing music his whole life, but he is a professional photographer, and most people know him as a photographer, you know, and music is something that's so intrinsic to him and something he's been doing such a long time that, like, you know, he has all this knowledge, but like he doesn't really use it that much. You know, it's more of just something he has in his pocket. I wonder, you know, because you started so early with music, if it wasn't always something that was inside of you that maybe you thought I would do one day, but when acting presented itself, it's like, you know, more of an opportunity, and, you know, being in an area where you're sort of like, you have no ceiling, basically. You know, it's like a straight pipeline to LA and the actual industry, you know what I mean? So you're in an area that's already set up for that. So then to circle back to music, you know, much later in life, and realize, like, I'm actually passionate about this. I think that's like a really interesting thing. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
I think that it's a testament. It would probably have to be a testament to some level of, you know, just like a gravitational pull towards something.
Mm-hmm.
But if you asked me now, I would tell you I'm shocked it took me so long to find music. It seems so obvious, considering I was a dancer when I was younger, and I loved Broadway, and I loved singing and performing, and that was what I did before I started doing like TV and film.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's very strange it took me so long to find music. To be quite honest, I always thought it was odd how long it took. But that's the funny thing, is like, people want to talk, like, I say that I started making music two years ago, but I've been watering this seed in me since I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
I bought my first guitar when I was 19. I just never really learned how to play it. So, and that was the one I wrote like a lot of my first songs on. It is the worst guitar ever.
Isn't that how it goes?
It is the worst guitar ever, and I love it. It's in my bedroom. I love the guitar. Never play it. But
yeah.
You know, everyone has their first instrument where it's just like, I remember I showed someone the action on the guitar is like this high. Mm-hmm. And they're like, oh, it's good for finger strength. And
you're almost playing like a slide.
Yes.
Like you could just play slide guitar, turn it on its side.
Oh my God, I really should just turn it into that, shouldn't I?
You probably could, and it'd probably sound pretty cool.
It's true. I but it's like, so people talk about that. It's like the whole concept of like, in Hollywood, the famous trope is the overnight success, right? Sure. Oh, the person was unknown for years and then did a movie and blew up, and it's like, yeah, but that's not the whole picture. It's like, the honest picture is that as a kid, my parents loved Broadway. My mother was always playing Broadway soundtracks on the car. So like as a kid, I would listen to Castle on a Cloud on the way to school. and I would listen to like the soundtrack to Pippin, and I would listen to Secret Garden, and this was the soundtrack of like my childhood. And then when I'd hang out with my brother, it'd be like more Rent stuff, you know. And as a kid, my favorite musicals were In the Heights and Next to Normal and Phantom of the Opera, and so I would listen to all this stuff constantly. So I've been watering the seed of music in me since I was a little kid. But I think there's something, and I'm curious what you think about this, but I think there's a real transformative aspect that making your own music has. It's sort of like so much in the artistic world, entertainment industry, we are constantly looking outside of ourselves to get opportunities, to make money, to feel some sense of validation. But there's a great sense of autonomy that comes from just looking at an instrument and knowing you can make something from nothing. And I think that's why, in my honest opinion, and what I find so beautiful about acting and music is that at its baseline, it's an art. Really, at its baseline, it's entertainment. You go up a notch, it's an art. And then if you keep going up in sort of this level of sort of capacity for potential, it's really just a tool for self-transformation and self-actualization. And I think that for me, that's why I think I took to music so quickly, was because it was like I had all this energy from acting, but acting is an industry where you're constantly needing someone else to make something happen at a high level. Of course, I can go out and make something for myself, but if you want to do something at a high level, there's a lot of pieces that have to fall into the right place.
Absolutely.
And when music came around, I had all of this energy from acting that had been building up for years, just being very frustrated with how slow things took and being very frustrated with the process. And then when I realized I could do everything myself with music, I think that's why it all happened very quickly.
Yeah. Wow. That's spot on, you know, and I couldn't agree more, honestly. As a solo musician myself, I actually write and record and produce my own music. And
it's amazing. I love your song Drugs, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
The whole concept of being like a solo act essentially is very, very similar. I had grown up playing in bands and, adhering to other people's schedules and their visions and, you know, just kind of falling into place, you know, being part of a unit, which I think is invaluable. Like I learned a lot about just how to collaborate, you know, and additionally, like I picked up a lot of different sounds along the way. You know, if I'm playing bass in the band, I'm watching the drummer and the guitarist and I'm learning their parts, you know, and I'm picking up on what they're doing, or I'm helping them write parts. And so when I started my own project, it's like I had like a huge repertoire of sounds to work with, you know. So it was very much like just believing that I could do it. You know, it really just came down to the fact that, like, you know, I have all the resources and the desire to make it happen. And that's actually the hardest part, you know what I mean? And then you just have to kind of like set your goal to actually, you know, invest in yourself, you know?
So what was the first, like, so when you had made the choice to stop playing in a band, or not even stop, but sort of redirect your energy, right? Because as musicians, it's fun to play with bands. It's fun.
Sure,
right?
Of course.
But when you make that decision to start doing your own project, your solo project, what was that first day like?
You know, I actually remember because I set myself like a goal where I booked studio time for 2 months ahead. Like it was like May and I set it for like, I guess it was August. So it was like 3 months. And I texted my friend Paul and I was like, hey, like I want to come to the studio in August and I got some songs. And he's like, okay, cool. So I'm like, okay. So I want to do 2 songs. I got to write 2 songs before then. I got to figure out what I want them to sound like and just figure out some semblance of a direction for this project. Yes. You know, I didn't have a name. It didn't have anything. It was just starting. And I had sold off all my recording gear because I was playing in this one band that was taking up a lot of my time and I needed money. And so I was selling a lot of my gear. And I only had my interface and I had my computer and I had one microphone. And I started just like writing songs. You know, I'd been writing songs for a really long time in different bands and with my siblings, you know. And so writing songs wasn't anything that was foreign to me. I just hadn't ever tried writing my own songs.
So when you were in the band, you were playing the songs that the singer or guitarist brought?
Yeah, usually it was like an idea that they would start, and we work on it together. I've always kind of had a brain to where if someone gives me an idea, I'm like, oh, I got like 6 things for that. You know what I mean?
I got you. I know that.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, I mean, day one, I think it was more just kind of stepping into the unknown, and again, just sort of having to believe that like I wasn't going to fall and like fail immediately, like taking that first step. And I'm glad I stuck with it. I think the main thing is like I was really not confident with my singing voice. You know, like I knew I could like really play everything. I was proficient on all the instruments, but with my singing voice, I was like, I wasn't very confident for a really long time.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, but I think doing that like forced me out of my comfort zone, and I think it ended up really benefiting me and my confidence like down the road.
That's interesting you brought up the singing voice, because I find that that's like, when I think of, I don't remember when it was, but I had this very pivotal moment in my like artistic path. It was around the time we were recording my second single, so it must have been like, I don't know, a year and a half ago or something, but it was like, I'll never forget, I was in my bedroom and I had my little Focusrite set up, and it was sitting on a chair. Had my laptop in the corner, and I was just sitting on my bed, and I didn't know where to set up. I didn't know how to do anything, but I was practicing to the track, and I was just recording vocals. And I remember there's this one moment where I was like, something doesn't feel right. I was like, something just needs to happen. I was like, my voice feels fine, but I'm like trying to be to something, and I don't know what it was. And there's this moment I feel like, and this is the self-transformative aspect of music, but there's this moment where I just started making noise. Like I just started trying to like piss the neighbors off. And just really just like, cause I was like, what's in here that's trying to get out right now? And I feel like it sounds like that's what happened with your singing voices. You're like, I have all the tools, everything's around me, but it's like, I need to unlock this. And then once you unlock this and you unlock your voice, I mean, that's such a metaphor, you know, for everything in life.
Yeah, it really is. It truly is. Yeah. I feel like it's sort of a gradual thing too, you know, because, you know, unlike yourself, I mean, not too unlike yourself, I'm still pretty early in my musical career as well. You know, I've been playing music for a long time, but doing it at this capacity and at this level, you know, I'm still kind of getting through it. You know, I did a tour last year, and the main thing I was worried about was losing my voice. You know, did my first tour, and we did 40 shows, you know, over the span of a couple months, and like,
that's amazing.
Yeah, and it was coming right out of the pandemic too, so like it was a hard transition from being inside to being outside and just like out in the world and playing shows every single night. So, but it was incredible, and I think I ended up surprising myself about how well I did and how good I felt most of the time. You know,
because it's a learning curve. You have to know and this is something that right. You have to realize what can you risk, like how much can you blow on this one song. Like it's like how crazy can I go on this song and still have enough for the rest?
Yeah.
And it's sort of like you have to pace yourself, but you can only pace yourself once you've kind of done it a few times. You're like, all right, went too far. Went too far that night. Didn't go far enough. All right, we'll find a middle ground somewhere.
Absolutely.
But it's hard.
It can be hard, yeah. I think everything requires muscle, you know. In order to build muscle, you have to tear muscle, you know what I mean? So, and I don't mean that about your vocal cords, but
no, well said though.
Just metaphorically.
I think it's like I think something that's part of, and this might be of value to someone listening, but I think that when I was younger, I was always looking for other people to tell me what to do, give me answers. It's really funny on this one recorded vocal exercise that I do every day. At the very end of the recording, and I love listening to it because I just sound so ridiculous, but I ask the teacher, how long is 15 minutes enough to sing before I perform? And like I ask him that question, and I laugh every time I hear that question because I just sound so naive in the sense that I actually, it probably took me honestly 6-8 months to figure out what kind of warm up I needed to do throughout the day before I did a show. Like how I needed to pace myself day of the show. And it's really interesting. I was listening. I love golf, and Tiger Woods was giving this really cool interview on Golf Digest on their YouTube page. And he talked about peaking at the right moment. And he's like, when I play a tournament, I'm trying to peak at the right moment. He's like, I warm up all day to peak at the right moment. And I thought like, that's exactly how I felt about like music.
Yeah.
It's like if I know I'm going to the studio, my whole day is really catered around peaking at the right moment.
That's so true, and that's definitely tour life as well. You know, as the front man, it's like you have to really be prepping all day. You have to be hydrating. You got to make sure your system is balanced. You know, and like certain things you can't eat, certain things you can't. You know, maybe you shouldn't do. You know, but you know, 30 minutes to an hour and a half, like performance that you're at like your absolute best. You know, and sometimes I've had a few times where I've missed that window, and I go on stage feeling kind of like sluggish, but as soon as you get up there and the adrenaline kicks in, you know what I mean, you can kind of get through it. But the mindfulness of day-to-day practices and maintaining your physical and mental state in order to peak, like it's true.
not easy. It's something
easy. Yeah.
It's a responsibility you have, because if you're out, you know, hanging out with your friends the night before a show screaming, you know, and partying off, it's like you can't do a show the next day.
No. Sometimes, some of those times those things require a calculated risk. You know, it's like I'm probably gonna go to a nightclub and watch Questlove DJ until 3 a.m, and I'll be fine tomorrow. We'll figure it out. But I definitely got to do that. You know what I mean? Like
there's a risk reward system for sure.
Exactly, absolutely. Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I do have a couple more questions for you, if that's all right.
Please go ahead.
Cool. Yeah. Okay, so when you record a new song, when you write a new song, who's the first person that you send it to?
My mom, probably. It's probably my mom. It goes to my mom. Yeah, it mostly always goes to my mom first.
Is she your biggest fan or your biggest critic?
My mom is interesting because sometimes she's very supportive, so I forget how critical she can be, but she'll tell me. Like, my mom will actually tell me what's up. She'll tell me if she doesn't. Like, one time, oh my God, I sent her an unmixed song. And she was like, Ian, it doesn't sound right. And I was like, no, Mom, it's unmixed. And I was just like, and she's like, oh, and I was like, okay. She's like, so it's not going to sound like that when it comes out. And I'm like, no. She's like, good. And
right.
But I probably send it to my mom, and I've had a couple moments. I want to share one story. I've never told this story. One of my favorite moments ever was when I got the first mix for my song Eloise from Jacob McCaslin, the music producer. And I will never forget that feeling. I was in my living room. I plug it in my phone. I'm just listening on headphones, and I'm dancing my ass off in my living room. I'm so happy because it just sounds exactly how I want it to sound. And I think that there's moments like that that really keep you going, because we all know the feeling when we plug in our headphones, we don't like the way it sounds. We've all been there, where we're like, is that it? Is that?
It's like, oh, we have work to do. We have work to do.
But you know what I mean? It's like, so for me, it's like I think the first person that I want to impress is myself, to honestly answer your question. And I feel like if I'm happy with it, I'm such a harsh critic of myself. I think it's one of the reasons that I've been successful, but also one of the reasons that I'm, perpetually dissatisfied with things, is because, the high standard and the high, like the demand of myself that I seemingly have created somewhere, whether subconsciously or consciously. But it's like when I listen to the first track, it's like I almost am sending it to myself, and I want myself to approve. And it's a very rare moment when I hear something that I've made that I'm like, okay, this is it. Like even my newest song, Disposable Moments, which will come out probably in about a month or so. We just shot the music video for that in North Carolina. Even that song had to grow on me. I loved it when I first wrote it. And then there was this, 6-8 month lull where I just really didn't listen to it at all. And then as I started to make the music video again, I realized how cool of a song it was. And it was like, it's interesting how, it's a relationship to this very living, breathing thing that changes when I change. And I hear different things in it, or I hear the complexity in it. I'm like, oh, it doesn't sound like stuff that people are making these days. And it's like, but also and I think this is interesting with the whole TikTok world and stuff, is I feel like music's taking this really interesting turn, right? Where it's like, music is kind of becoming very gimmicky. It's becoming like, it's almost like a quick little commercial. Here's a fun little nugget to chew on real quick. And I think it puts pressure sometimes to write songs a certain way. But also, I think there's always going to be an audience who wants to listen to complex, interesting lyrics, who wants to hear a cool guitar solo. and who wants to hear somebody talking about something that's not as obvious as we might think. And I think it's scary to do things that's different, or it's, you know, but at the same time, it's like, there's so many musicians in the world, right? So we can't all be singing about the same stuff. You know, we got to sing about something different, or we got to sing about something that we want to sing about. Otherwise, what's the point?
I agree.
You know?
I actually wanted to comment because I listened to your song Eloise before we got on today, and my initial thought was like, this is a cool mix, like, because the song itself is like very, it has kind of a timeless sound to it. Like it gave me the same kind of feeling of like listening to, I don't know if you've ever listened to that band America. They were like pretty big in like the 70s. They have a song
Sister Golden Hair.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's so funny you compare it to that.
Well, I keep on thinking about you, Sister Golden Hair surprise. And I just can't live without you. Can't you see it in my eyes?
Oh my God, that song. And I have such history. That
Really?
song will just, oh, I love that song. But I remember I listened to it nonstop at one of the worst breakups of my life, which is what I
That's
wrote Eloise about.
crazy. Oh man, that's so crazy. I just guessed that.
That is
yeah,
crazy.
No, I was listening to it, and it gave me that same like this is really like, it sounds like it's from like this could be being played at like Woodstock or something. You know what I mean? But the mix was like modern. And I was like, that's kind of an interesting, cool thing, you know, because you don't really see that a lot of like, people like taking sounds from like times before and then like modernizing them so that like, you know, that could play after like a Doja Cat song and it wouldn't sound like less good, or people wouldn't perceive it as sounding like quieter. You know what I mean? I think that's what people usually think. It's like, it's quieter. It's like, nah, it's just not an 808. Like, it's okay. You know,
What does 808 mean?
like all the bass, like the
I see.
loud, like trap drums and stuff like that.
I
That's
see.
usually- Yeah.
A lot of it is like, I guess my sound, yeah, you could say my sound is very much mixed in with the live instruments, but also there's also the, you know, the computerized elements to the song.
Mhm.
I think mixing the two, like for me, it's like acoustic guitar is everything to me. I love the acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
There's nothing better than that jangly kind of acoustic guitar sound,
Mhm.
you know, and it's just like where the guitar almost sounds like it's like falling apart as you're playing it. And it's
Sure.
like, that's one of the reasons I love James Bay. And I'm so impressed and so inspired by James Bay and the way he's like, even currently now promoting his new album, Leap, which I listened to the other day, which has such special songs on it. Have you listened to the new James Bay one?
Save your love for someone who's never gonna run, for someone who's there when you wake up.
It's just so acoustic guitar, and he's just traveling around promoting his album with his acoustic guitar. I think that it's interesting you talk about Eloise like that, because Eloise definitely, like, I wanted it to feel modern, but I also wanted it to feel authentic, and the acoustic guitar was such a huge element of the song for me.
Yeah.
The very basic chord progression was just like, and the interest, and Jacob came up with this really interesting voicing. Instead of doing just an F to a G to an A minor, we ended up doing this like little F9 shape or whatever. And so it's just sliding up, and a lot of open strings were involved. So the song has a very almost like beautiful dissonance.
Yep,
and
I heard that immediately. I was like,
right.
I read, because I use a lot of those same shapes myself, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to, you know, be able to pick out people who play guitar in similar ways to me, like the voicings I use. I you know, some of my favorite bands are like, you know, when I feel like the guitarist is like I would have written that, you know what I mean?
Like what?
You know, so there's this band that I'm really into right now called Cruza. They do like I would say it's like chopped and screwed R&B.
How do you spell that?
Cruza. Little shout out to Cruza. My friend Charity is the guitarist in that band, and she's just got like a very unique playing style where it's like very rooted in like jazz progressions, but it's like she kind of freaks it. You know what I mean? It's a lot of effects and a lot of like, I guess vibes would be a very general way of describing it.
I'm gonna listen.
But yeah, I would definitely recommend them. I have one more question for you.
Yes.
This is kind of a wild card question if you're down for it. If you got the chance to talk to somebody dead or alive, who would it be? I'm imagining like a quick lunch, you know.
An LA coffee.
Yeah, straight up. Yeah, it's like we're gonna meet at Tender Greens, 1 to 1:45.
Exactly. It's like a therapy session. They start wrapping up at 1:38.
Damn near, yeah.
Dead or alive? Oh man, who would that be? It's I don't know. There's a celebrity angle to it. Like, well, who's a celebrity? It's like I don't think I'd ever want to sit down with like a politician or anything.
Right.
Would I want to sit down with an athlete? I'm really thinking hard about this one. I really am.
It's tough.
It is tough. It's like I personally feel like if I could sit down with someone for a quick lunch and just like have the opportunity of meeting them, it probably would have been Marlon Brando.
You came in with luck be a lady. Luck be a lady. Luck be a lady tonight.
Really?
Yeah, it would have been Marlon Brando. Because that dude was so misunderstood. And he was he was just like, clearly he was just kind of, he just didn't really fit in. You know, he was like a very peculiar creature. And I think I would.
Do you feel like you relate to that, or?
Maybe. I mean, what I love about Brando is I don't think that anybody's done acting at that level. I think it's like, even in today's day and age, I don't want to say anything too negative about the current entertainment industry in Hollywood, but we don't have a Marlon Brando. If you want my honest opinion, closest thing we have is like Oscar Isaac.
Okay. Hey, look, I'm happy for the gig, but who wrote this?
I did.
Okay.
I think Oscar Isaac is as close as it gets to like the actors I fell in love with growing up, like the Al Pacinos and the rest in peace James Caan.
R.I.P.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, James. I was talking to my friend the other day, and they didn't really know who James Caan was, and I was like, Sonny.
Shot my father. Even the shooting of your father was business, not personal, Sonny. Well, then business will have to suffer. All right.
He's Sonny Corleone. He's like Rollerball. He's Brian's Song. It's like all these different things, and it's like these actors that I grew up with, you know, like the James Caans, the Al Pacinos, the Robert Duvalls, the Marlon Brandos, the Paul Newmans, Steve McQueen. Like these were the guys, James Dean. These are the people that I personally made me want to be an actor. Montgomery Clift. Always have to say Montgomery Clift. We don't have people like that in today's day and age. So I'd love to sit down with the guy who started it all, who inspired all those people, because he just demanded something new out of the craft. Hollywood really didn't know what to do with him, which is an indication that he might have, you know, he might have been a pretty cool guy. And
Probably,
you know,
you probably spend a lot of game in 45 minutes. Probably learn a lot.
Oh my God. I mean, I have no idea what we talk about. I got to work with Robert Duvall, and I feel like it would be similar to this, but I remember like I got to go to dessert with Robert Duvall one time. I was working on a movie called The Judge, and I had been out to dinner with Jeremy Strong, who's now blown up on Succession. But I was I finally got to hang out with Jeremy, and we went out to dinner to one of my favorite restaurants in Boston. And afterwards, he's like, "You want to go get dessert with Duvall?" And I was like, sure. And I remember we were all sitting together, and I thought like, oh, he's going to talk about stories from like Apocalypse Now and The Godfather and this and that. And the dude just talked about where you could get the best barbecue in the United States. That's all he talked about. Was like, he was, I will never forget that ever. I was like waiting for stories about Coppola and, you know, and all he was talking about is like that Arizona had great barbecue and Texas and North Carolina. And I was like, anyway, so I feel like lunch with Brando would kind of be like that.
Yeah. You could ask him what his favorite barbecue is. I'm sure he's got a spot.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think that to sit down with the people who inspired us, I think that's special. But, you know, I don't know. I'm not. What about you?
Jimi Hendrix. just going to drop this real quick before we hang up, but he's actually my cousin. I'm a distant relative, on my mom's side.
Wow.
I would love to be able to pick his brain for a bit and just like hear him talk about music more than anything. You know what I mean? I've watched a lot of interviews with him, and like I've watched most of his performances that are available, and like the way that where he's like not even playing guitar. He's not even playing guitar when he's up there. You know what I mean? It's just pure like expression. You know what I mean? Like the guitar is pretty much just an extension of his spirit. You know, so part of me like relates to him very heavily. Part of me doesn't, because I think I don't do any drugs personally. And he has done every drug, it seems like. So there's like this kind of like point where I'm just like, I don't know if I really understand some of what he was, where he was. You know what I mean? But the way that he was a channel for the way he channeled his own gifts, and like he was kind of like fully personifying his power. Like, I thought that's
like, a great way of saying it.
Yeah, he was like, he's on a different level. He really was. So I think being able to just literally just speak to him and just be in his presence for like however long, it would be life changing.
What age did you find out that you were related to him?
I was like 16, 17.
Wow. And had you already been making music?
Yeah, I'd been playing drums for a bunch. I'm a drummer first. I've been playing drums for a bunch of years, and then I started playing guitar after that. So, yeah, I'd always been interested in guitar, but it was like drums were natural to me, and I had to really like work to learn guitar. It's funny.
My favorite guitarists typically play guitar like a drum.
Yeah, I play guitar. Yeah. Drums are everything. Bass is just a drum. Guitar is like, I play it like it's a drum because it's very rhythmic, and like I'm kind of branching out into some like new territory with my guitar playing. I'm self-taught. I never took lessons or anything, but lately I've been starting to incorporate some theory into my playing, and like learning some of that for myself and taking what I need from it essentially. And it's been interesting. I'm just at the beginning of that journey, but excited to like dive into it more and keep working on the sound.
That's the beauty of the guitar, man. I think that one of the things I love about the guitar is that it's yours to do what you want.
Absolutely.
You can do the cowboy chords, and you can write great songs doing that and just slide the capo up and down the neck, or you can go do some crazy, gnarly, weird, and the funniest part is like every song written from any perspective is just as valid. And there's great songs written with 3 chords, and then you listen to a John Mayer song and he's doing the weirdest voicings of chords and doing the oddest things, but like, it's like, I think that's my favorite thing about the guitar is it's like choose your own adventure, and it's like how deep do you want to take it, and like that's what I find most inspiring about the guitar. And it's so interesting that it's funny because you said Jimi Hendrix, but like you could argue that there's a very similar comparison to Jimi Hendrix and Marlon Brando and how they were the inspirations for everybody we know as our favorite guitarists. They're like Marlon Brando kicked off the generation of the Al Pacinos of the world, the Robert De Niro's. Those were Marlon Brando disciples. Stevie Ray Vaughan. You don't have Stevie Ray Vaughan without Jimi Hendrix. It's like you don't have any of these people. You don't have, you definitely don't have John Mayer.
No.
And it's like, and there's this lineage, and so it's interesting that you went to the source.
Yeah, I tend to, whenever I like something that I hear like that's modern, I'm like, okay, but like, what are their influences? And then I was like, well, what are their influences? It's like you can kind of trace everything back to, well, realistically, you can trace everything back to Black people mostly. You know what I mean? But that's kind of what I'm always looking for. It's like this is a homogenized version of something that is rooted in my culture. So I'm always kind of looking for that whenever I'm approaching something that because I connect to it, and I'm like, why do I connect to it? Like what is
like
it
where
about?
where is that sort of the thing that really what can't be understood? Like what is that pull towards this thing? Like where does that come from?
Yeah.
And it's like it is like there is that sort of like, what do they call it again? It's like there's this term where they say it's like you're because of like a past or a lineage you come from, or it's like there's this like blood connection or something. It's a term, and I'm not remembering the specific term, but it's like a blood memory. It might be called blood memory or something, but it's almost just like it's something that you just inherently can't really put your finger on, but it's just something you feel. And it's a pull you have towards this thing. A lot of people will relate it to like past life stuff. But this sort of thing where it's like when you become a growing up in this world and all of a sudden you want to do this, it's like, well, where did that desire come from? And you're not really entirely sure. But people sometimes attribute that to just like wanting to do something that you had once done before.
Yeah, I guess that you know, when they say it's in your blood, you know, like that.
Yeah, like what does that mean?
Yeah, I think it must that term must stem from the thing that you're referring to. I'm gonna have to look that up because that's actually really fascinating.
Right.
We are incredibly over time, but this is
it's fine. It's a good conversation.
Incredible conversation. Such a
Amen.
pleasure to get to pick your brain and talk to you about some art stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. I'm a talker. I love, I like having cool conversations. I like talking about art. I love, I think that one of my favorite things about music, honestly, and I guess we can end with this, but like, I meet some really cool people in the music world. Like the people I've encountered and just the stories and just like the passion I find that musicians have is incredibly inspiring to me. And like, because it's different than the acting world. It's a different personality that attracts. Mm-hmm. And I truly enjoy talking to other musicians and hearing their stories. And we should link up, man. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, I'd be down for that. Well, thank you again, and have a great weekend. And I will I'll see you soon.
Looking forward to it. Travel safely.
Sounds good. Thank you, man. Appreciate you.
3 p.m. I'm still undressed, flipping through my digital Rolodex. I'm sitting lost here on the ground. Unpacked boxes stacked up all around. Then I saw you on the screen with your long red hair.